Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am joined with a full house of the Acsom contributors. It is Friday. We finally got here, and we might even have, let me just check, we might even have a new recruit. I think you will remember him from his previous career as a WWF wrestler. But he has been, yes, recently shorn. The recently shorn James McKenzie. Takes years off you, pal, which means you're about 12 now. How are you doing?
It's interesting. I've had people tell me I look older with a haircut, but I don't know. It depends. You'll get different opinions from different people. But I joined the podcast June 2022. Started growing it October 2022. So basically, the entire time I've done the podcast, I've had it. So
is he going to be like Samson? Is he going to lose his ability to verbalise his thoughts on all things Celtic? Massive talking points today. Get involved in the comment section. It is the big one. It's all about done bar by the last couple of bits of chat today, of course, and an hour before kickoff tomorrow. We will be going live 1 hour before kickoff, and it'll be great for everybody all around the globe to join A Celtic State of Mind, as we always do, covering the game. I'm going to start off with Brian Degnan. Brian, we're talking about those mind games. John Lennon, great track, but to be fair, I think that it comes down to how a manager can, influence a dressing room, and that influence can be negative or positive. And I'm going to concentrate on Brendan Rodgers and how he's managed us, our expectations, the media, and ultimately the group of players that he is now trusting. It looks as though he's got quite a small band of players that he is putting his trust in, Brian. How impressed have you been with Brendan Rodgers over the last few months?
I think over the last few months, what you've really saw, and I think we alluded to it a while back actually, is he seems more comfortable in himself in the mission statement. I think the first part of the season where I was really critical was it could be quite snipey, and it looked like he was making excuses at times. He was kind of blaming recruitment at times. He didn't look happy, and a lot of people have picked up on it. And I think sort of post Mark Lawwell, where it appears, I think Brendan's got his way and he's changed how recruitment's going to be done. I think I've seen a man here that's gone, right, okay, now we're in. Now let's control the team, control the narrative. Let's have a bit of fun, as he likes to have. And I think that what you've really saw for that is the messaging's been clear. Because what you can never say about Brendan is he's not unintelligent. He's a clever guy. Mm-hmm. When he says something, there's a meaning behind it. There always is. And I think that the messaging's been so on point about controlling the narrative. We were out our story, fostering that siege mentality, then complimenting the players, then bring the players in, then talk about the trust in the players, how happy he is, then talk about get to form at the right time, laser-like focus, and then, as I alluded to at the start, talking about having some fun at the weekend. And I think he's played a blinder. He knows the Scottish press, he knows how to work. And it's not just the effect on the team. Look at the effect on the support for both sides. One side's an absolute meltdown. The other side's laughing, excited at the game, certainly more confident than probably we've been for any other derby this season, I would suggest. And I think that's partly down to Rodgers and how he chose his words and the time he chose to use them. So, this might get clipped if something goes wrong, but got to say, it feels like we're on the right track. And I'll be honest, and I'm happy to eat humble pie, but it feels like we might get the Brendan of old now, and things are getting a bit more on track than they have been.
The thing about the Brendan of old, Brian, massive discussion yesterday. Over 500,000 people viewed a video whereby I was talking about achievements, and obviously in relation to the context of that. The Brendan of old came into a Celtic job whereby there was the return of what was meant to be this mighty challenge of Rangers in his first season. Rangers, that particular campaign, came third. Celtic were invincible, and Celtic won the league with 30 points, Aberdeen being the nearest challengers, if you can say they were near. 30 points, that's astonishing. There has been a challenging season upon us, Lloyd, and it has been a challenge. Now, we can talk about why it's been a challenge. Who's been better? Who's been worse? Who's progressing and who's going backwards? Who's standing still? We could talk about all that. But everything that has been presented to Brendan Rodgers, Lloyd, this season, Yeah, it's taken time, but he has faced it and he's overcome it. And this is basically the result of that. We're going into this final derby of the season, league campaign that is, and everything is in our hands. We're in control here. And I think a massive part of that, right, and it's not Brendan fanboy moment, is going back to what Brian says there. He's been over this before. He knows what is required to get the job done. And I have been impressed with him over the last few weeks. What about this week, though? It's very calm and composed in the Celtic camp, isn't it?
Yeah, it is indeed. But like you're saying there, Brendan's ran this course before, so he knows what he's doing. And the way I see it, like this is round 3-5, and tomorrow we've got the opportunity to deliver a massive knockout blow to Rangers and basically secure the title. So Brendan himself knows, and he's chosen his words very carefully, and some managers have picked up on it and took it the wrong way. So it's just, let's all just have fun this weekend.
I was wondering how long it would take for somebody to say that. James, young James, mature James. I'm not quite sure what type of James we're getting today, but you've definitely had a wee trim. And obviously, another person who's changed his hairdo this season, James, is the one and only Dyson Maeda. How big is he? Because, you know, coming into the last few weeks, we're talking about just getting everybody right up to that peak of form and fitness. Sometimes it comes hand in hand, of course. And Brendan Rodgers was talking about the best version of Celtic. It does finally feel as though tomorrow, if Dyson Maeda lines up tomorrow for us, it will feel like that is the best version of this team that we've got.
Yeah, you've got to think so. If you're assessing this Celtic team, you're picking your strongest 11. Dyson Maeda is probably always going to be there, especially if you line up for a game against Rangers, because he seems to thrive in those games. Just a bit money has 2 goals against Rangers, but the performances that he turns in against Rangers, they're always 8 or a 9 out of 10. You saw it from, about 20 seconds into the last game against Rangers. He'd already made his big impact on the match. I think he picked up an injury somewhere in the second half and he was still doing a lot of the run. So he's a player that's going to be massively important for us. I think the wings are going to be a real deciding factor, because you've got Dyson Maeda coming back from injury, and you've got James Forrest, who is much he's in good form right now. That's been against Hearts, Aberdeen. Rangers is a better opposition than those 2 teams. So how is Forrest going to handle that step up as well? Is it just a purple patch, or is the real James Forrest back? Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow. But I think Dyson Maeda handling James Tavernier, it's going to be a tricky test, but he's shown time and time again that he's up for it. He always causes havoc. He causes a nightmare for that Rangers backline. I think having him back in the team is going to be a massive boost for Celtic. I mean, how he's recovered from just a matter of weeks ago, he's ruled out for the end of the season. Mm-hmm. Brendan Rodgers is confirming it at events, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, he's recovered from this season-ending injury. He's an absolute freak of nature. We knew that already, but that recovery just confirms it. I
mean, I've been called a freak of nature a few times, Chris, but not generally in generous terms. Yes, Dyson Maeda.
That's the Acsom group chat, Paul.
You're right. No, that's on a group chat I've got with my wife and my boy. Yes, you're right. But Chris, we'll come to the wingers because I do think they're going to be key. But one thing that I found really interesting was the fact that the 2 goals scored by Kyogo, we've been moaning all season up me about the wing play. Brendan Rodgers has spoken about it and how it's maybe affected Kyogo Furuhashi. You look at his first season, 20 goals, top goal scorer. Second season, 34, top goal scorer. He was always there, and he was there in the big moments. But I do think he's been there in the big moments this season. But what I found interesting against Hearts was the 2 through balls came from Rio Atati and Matt O'Reilly. And for me, the midfield play at the weekend was something back to what we would expect from that midfield trio. And we've been saying really all season how much Kyogo's missed Hatate as much as the wingers, Chris. That's going to be key as well. The fact Hatate, not only is he back and firing and fit, but he seems to be hitting the peak form at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned already some of the challenges that Brendan Rodgers has faced this season. And I think a large element of that has been not being able to play a settled midfield 3, not being able to play a settled backline, not having a consistent set of players to call on. And actually, we're getting that at just the right time of the season. And we're also, as James has said there, we've spoken about James Forrest coming back as well. And I think that the player who's going to benefit from that return to having a consistent lineup, across the middle and on the wings is going to be Kyogo, because Kyogo's play for me, I think it's dipped in parts, but his overall style of play and the way he's approached games hasn't changed that much. His movement's still there. He's still getting into positions. He's still, causing defenders havoc in terms of trying to mark him. And I think, what did he score? 7 goals against Rangers in 2023. I don't think he's scored yet in this year, so he's due. He's due a goal against Rangers, and I really hope it comes tomorrow. Not just one, not just two. Give us a Kyogo hat trick.
Oh, that doesn't happen very often in this fixture, does it? Who was the last guy to do that? Was it Dembele? Last guy to score a hat trick in this game. Now, I want to focus on this then, because Celtic Follower comes up. He's talking about red mist, and the way that red mist was explained to me was when I was on a driving course, and they were talking about, the old road rage guys. Don't know if you've ever suffered that or been the victim of it. And the terminology of red mist is if you're flying this plane, and what's the planes that let out the kind of pyrotechnics? Is it the red arrows? Is that right? Like the red steam off the back of it. Listen, I know it's not the right terminology, Chris, before you start laughing, but you could be the plane in this kind of this shape, right? And you could be maybe second or third row back, and the red mist gets in your eyes. And when it gets in your eyes, you start panicking. You react in a certain way that ordinarily you wouldn't react. And I think that we've seen a bit of that, Brian, over the last couple of weeks. And that's what I'm getting at with regards to Brendan. Brendan is composed. Brendan Rodgers, I'm calling him Brendan like he's my mate. Brendan Rodgers is composed, whereas we've seen a bit of red mist in the other camp. And I think that can feed into a game like this. People can start making mistakes. There's an aggression, there's an anger. And you're going to be in what was once described as a lion's den to Steven Gerrard. But then, much to the amusement of many, he spoke about it. How could it be a lion's den? He took it actually as with regards to there being no lions in Celtic Park. We all know that there are. So, Brian, red mist, how big a part does that play in a fixture like this?
I think so. I think it's I remember Gordon Strachan was talking one time about red mist. He said to Alan Thompson, like, whatever you do, keep the heat. Calm yourself down, don't do anything crazy. And I think 5 minutes later, being sent off. So, and actually, in terms of red mist, there's a few people in the comments who are a bit of red mist. I think for the other side of the city tuning in just for a bit of a hate watch.
Tuning in, are they?
Hiya. They love it, Hiya.
Hi guys.
So they're enjoying themselves. But look, I think that lack of composure has been key, right? And I think that I always talk about mentality because I think it's so important. And when you look at the way we've handled pressure, look, the season's not been great. We know that. We know the performances haven't been great. We've ranted about it plenty. But when we've been up against it, when it looks like we're struggling, last minute winners, favourites to lose the game, all that stuff, we've done well. We've had that strength of character and it's been composed. I think Callum McGregor spoke about it before as well when he said, we let other people talk, we just got on with our business. And Rodgers has been very much like that. It's just an all weekend train. We know what we need to do. We play well. We're at home. We'll be fine. And I think that you can clearly see when someone's been gotten to because they get defensive and they get snipey and they get annoyed and they lose composure. And if you do that during a game or in the lead up to the game, or if that's the message for the top down to players whose mentality is questionable at best, it's a recipe for disaster for them. I think. Now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen, right? It might be a very different type of game, but this is where I think the management part of being a football manager comes in. It's just dealing with people, knowing how to just go, look, lads, let's just relax. You know what you can do. Doesn't matter, whatever the score is. Until the game's done, you're in with a chance. And I think it's something that's been in Celtic's DNA for a while. And I think we'll see that again. Just keep calm and carry on.
No, you're right, Brian. And we've been in situations like that in life, at work, and all this kind of stuff where someone is so invested in whatever has annoyed them that they get this red mist, they've got the blinkers on, they can't actually see the wood for the trees. And you walk into a situation quite calm and composed, and it seems ridiculous to you as an outsider from being in that melting pot. Now, what you're expecting in that scenario, I would believe, within a sporting environment, is that your captain and your manager, at the very least, would be the calming influence. at the very least would be like trying to calm you down and say, actually, come on, let's just focus here, let's stay composed. And what we've seen over the last wee while is the absolute opposite of that. Now, Chris, I think you're of a similar vintage to me. Growing up, there was various TV shows that, were of their time. What were some of the kind of favourites? Because we do get a Masters of the Universe reference or two in the comments from time to time talking about Snake Mountain. Think about it. What kind of shows did you like growing up?
Oh, right now, and I'm gutted that James has cut his hair because he could have given us a good reference to Funhouse.
Oh, yes. A bit of Funhouse, a bit of the Pat Sharp. James, that's gone right over your head, isn't it? Pat Sharp, man. This was a mullet. Gaz Top had one of them as well. It was like taking Chris Waddle and then kind of times 10. It was really going for it. The other one, of course, was Malet's Mallet. Who remembers Malet's Mallet? Did anybody see Timmy Mallet on a wee cycle yesterday? Did you see
Mallet, it? Yeah.
Did you see Timmy Mallet Donegal talking about the Celtic flag?
Brilliant. That was brilliant.
I swear that guy's a vampire because he has not changed. The guy is not aged. He looks exactly the same as he did back in the 80s.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah, he does look exactly the same. Anyway, guys, just so that you understand, Mallet's Mallet was at the word association game, wasn't it? And he had this big, massive foam mallet. And if you ran out of time, he would whack you on the head. I'm pretty sure in this day and age, he wouldn't be allowed to assault children live on the telly, but he used to do that. And obviously, he was out for a wee cycle yesterday and he came across a Celtic flag. And he was very, for me, I just thought that there was a bit of passion in there and he spoke so highly of Celtic. I don't know, did you see it, Lloyd? Did you see it on the socials?
I seen it when I came home from work last night. Just quickly passed by it. It was quite a decent viewing, actually. Is it not something to do with Donegal and the original grass?
Yeah, first
part. Yeah. That's where it came from.
And what I liked about Fergus when obviously we rebuilt the stadium back in '94 was the fact that, true to the roots, we went back there and there was another sod of grass and it was laid, I think in the centre circle actually, at Celtic Park as we now know it. So true to the traditions of the club. Now we're talking about Celtic's best version here. And I think that, there's always been something kind of holding us back this season, Lloyd, right? Now, the name Mark Lawwell was mentioned earlier by Brian, and obviously in the summer we'll see the full effect of what Brendan is trying to build behind the scenes. But we've already seen some of these positions and some of these moves getting made behind the scenes, Lloyd. For me, quite a patient approach by Brendan Rodgers, but I think by the summer he's going to have it all in place. What does that mean, though, for the future? Does that mean that he regains a bit of control when it comes to recruitment? Or is it the same scenario whereby there's a whole, and I'm not meaning a committee, but there's a whole plethora of members of staff involved in the recruitment of a single player? Do you think it's going to change much, or are we just going to get better people in the positions?
The thing with that is obviously the way the club operate, it's always going to be the same structure as now. You kind of would hope that they would progress further and obviously get like a committee involved, and because you see all these other clubs down south and all over the place, they've all got people in certain sporting director roles, football operations and coaches and that. So I think this summer Brendan needs to take control of that more than anything, because we can't have a repeat of last summer, because this summer is going to be a massive rebuild considering how many players they could possibly ship out and also spaces that are going to be filled in. But on that, Brendan, I don't think is focusing on that now. He's just focusing on getting this title in the bag, and that's all we need to concentrate on. Yeah,
it's like, as I say, in the background, there's all these things happening that don't affect us in the here and now. They need to be done. It's more of a kind of medium-term plan that he's working on, I think. But it is good to see that moves are happening. Chris, we've heard about Matt Cooper being involved. We know that Dan O'Day's already been moved to the pathway, so he's going to be helping, hopefully, young players coming through from the B team and the academy. A couple of young guys have signed extensions to their deals, Montgomery. And be honest, guys, who knew that Joey Dawson was even still at Celtic? Totally forgot about him.
What team does he play for?
Exactly. Isn't he in that kind of purgatory stage where he can't play for the B team and he can't play for the first team unless he's going to actually break through? James, what's the story? There's a group of players there who won't be playing much football if you're in that Joey Dawson category, aren't you?
Yeah, because I think he's around 21, maybe 22, which I think you're perhaps just a bit too old for the B team at that stage, unless you're McCarthy or a Quan stepping in for a testimonial game at some point in the season. So it's just a stage of limbo. I'm surprised I've not tried to loan him out or anything like that. I know Montgomery's loan was cut short because of an injury. He's had a pretty hard time this season after a good season the previous year at St Johnstone. He was nominated for Young Player of the Year, so I would expect them to build on that this season, but injuries have just completely derailed his momentum. You've seen that with a couple of youth prospects coming for the Celtic Academy. Karamoko Dembele suffered a really big injury in Andrew's first season. Mikey Johnson, we all know the injury issues he's had. And you've got to hope that that's not going to stop us getting some of these players through the academy and seeing their full potential, because some of them are getting hit with really big injuries. Joey Dawson, I think, even had a big injury as well. Was it him that broke his leg or something like that? It was a really bad one, or was that Dane Murray? I might be confusing the two.
Dane Murray,
I think they both had bad injuries. I think both of them did.
It's just, for me, when I'm looking at these moves in the background, it's one of these things that we've been talking about and moaning about all season, and now it's finally happening in the background. But focusing on the weekend, Chris, focusing on some of the aspects of this game that do play a part. Obviously, Gaffer v Gaffer, we've spoken about that a wee bit. What about the atmosphere? What about this coming together, things clicking? You know, if you compare and contrast to some of the moments of the season. So Brendan Rodgers has announced there's a lot of unhappy Celtic supporters, and I can understand that. And I think he's spoken about it as well. And there's quite a few that spring to mind in the Acsom group, the two Kevins, both of them, unhappy with Brendan Rodgers coming back. There might be somebody on the show today that I've forgotten about. So there was that. And then you've got, certain games that you think back to. You think back to the St Johnstone game where there was booing. You think back to the sack the board chants, the flatness of the atmosphere without the ultras in the ground, Chris. But at the weekend there, in the here and now, it seems to have come full circle. The stadium's absolutely packed to the rafters. The atmosphere is electric, and it's going to be exclusively Celtic fans at the weekend. We've got a massive part to play as fans, haven't we, Chris?
Without a doubt. And you know what? I've got no doubt that everybody that will go to the match will absolutely play their part. They always do, no matter the weather, no matter the form. The guys there will go and they'll shout and cheer and sing their hearts out, and fair play to them. I've got nothing but respect for the ones that do it. I miss the days when I was going and doing it myself, and I'm looking forward to now my wee boy's getting bigger to getting back there with the old man and the wee fella as well. So absolutely, atmosphere will be huge. We've got to turn Paradise into a bit of a cauldron, and a bit of a toxic cauldron for the Mob and Blue. Really put the pressure on, cheer every pass, every good positive move, and really show the players we're behind them. And look, I've always said throughout the season, every appearance I've had on here, I was very much in the positive camp about Brendan coming back. But I also made it clear that I understand the resistance and the reluctance to have him back. I understand some of the bitterness as well. Ultimately, he's the manager, and fundamentally his job is to win football matches, and he's doing that. And we're now starting to do it with a bit of flair and some decent football. Has it been a vintage season in terms of performances on the park? Has it gone to the levels of goal scoring that we had under Ange and under other managers? Probably not this season. But look, we're in the lead. We're in pole position. We're winning. I think we're going to enter tomorrow's game as favourites. And I think from a fan's perspective, let's get behind the manager, let's get behind the players, and let's make those Rangers players who won't have any supporters in there, let's make them really feel it when they come out of that game after being absolutely spanked. And that's what I want. And I've got something here that will help with the red mist. I think we should hand these out on the Acsom shop. There's a wee bit of deep heat, red mist, pain relief. And if anyone wants one, they can contact me directly. Because we know they like to contact us and spread a bit of information about us on the old socials. So,
we have heard.
If anybody wants to reach out, I'll give you a spare can.
A spare can of red, by the thing, deep heat, right? With regards to that, when I look at that, I think more of the Raljex, which was probably, you know what I mean, in the old changing rooms that were always frozen with cold showers.
It'll be Rangers at the weekend. Rangers.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, sharing information online, never pretty that, is it? I mean, who on earth would do that within the Celtic fan base? I don't think anyone would behave in such a way. That is just inappropriate and a bit tragic. Bobby, Bobby Chariot. There you are. Still don't know who that is. I thought earlier, looking at that, it looks like Alexis Sale wearing a Phil Spector wig. And then I realised it's maybe actually Bobby. And he's maybe actually singing there at his local and being all serious. So let us know, Bobby. But buckle up, guys. This is going to be some ride on Saturday. But I have a feeling we'll be the ones having fun at the final whistle. And Brendan is cooking. Talking about cooking then, and the atmosphere and people stepping up, Brian Degnan. One of the biggest cheers at the weekend was Callum McGregor's double tackle. Which just kind of showed you know, going back to that banner, we're all in here for you. You've got to be all in for us, kind of thing. You know, that mentality of we're here and we're always here. You need to step up. And when Callum McGregor did that, after having a couple of ropey games coming back from injury, I think all the fans got it. And it really was that moment where everything seemed to click. We're going to be looking at this season in the future, Brian, going, yeah, it wasn't vintage, was it? It wasn't vintage Celtic. But wee moments like that can be almost turning points. You know, Joe Hart, that save against St Johnstone that led to James Forrest clinching goal up at McDermott, that tackle by Callum McGregor. These wee moments, you know, the penalty kick from Adam Ida against Hibs, these moments of a season can really make it a success. And basically what Callum McGregor said to me is, I'm back. That's what that moment said to me, Brian. He's going to be massive this weekend, as always, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think what we saw against Hearts was Callum looking more like himself. You know, the way he moved along the park was a lot. He's a very graceful footballer, Callum McGregor. He does move across the park, you know, in quite a nice way. And you kind of saw that again against Hearts. And I think, you know what that reminded me of, that tackle? It put me in mind that when Ange was talking about Kyogo, after I think Kyogo's first or second game, and Kyogo tracked somebody back and caught them in the touchline and tackled, and the place went nuts. And Ange said that's when Kyogo knew, this is the place for me, this is brilliant, because that effort was so rewarded. And it put me in mind of that. And I was just thinking, if you're Callum McGregor and you're hearing a bit of noise about your performances, and that's the reaction you get to winning that ball and starting a move, you've got to be galvanised. And the thing about it is, like, when James mentioned it earlier about James Forrest and people stepping up, we've got a reasonably experienced team likely to be put out. I mean, McGregor's been over the course, Forrest has been over the course, Carter Vickers has been over the course, Joe Hart's super experienced international, like Hatate knows all about it now, Kyogo, Maeda, like, I mean, it's a team that's experienced in this field. Probably Scales is the only one that isn't, and I don't think he's been bad in the games against them, and I think he'll be buoyed by his new contract as well. So I think there's so much to be excited about in that experience, and I think we've talked sometimes about leaders in the park, and actually I think Matt O'Reilly at times is a kind of quiet leader. You know, I think he leads by example a bit. You can see him dictating play at times. I think he seems to enjoy that environment. You saw that with his penalty. The gallousness of that penalty was unbelievable. So I think there's a lot to look forward to, but just going back to your point about McGregor, I think that's excellent. And I think, much like the way Tavernier has nightmares about Maeda, I think when Rangers players see McGregor in that part dictating play, I think they just think, they panic, they retreat back. You can see it, you saw it before. And I think a Callum McGregor on form, full of fire, dictating play is a beautiful thing to watch. And I think he'll thrive in that atmosphere tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know what Jerry's trying to do. He's trying to whip up some kind of frenzy here in the comments section. What boy band name would you give the lads here? That's a bit cruel. You know what I mean? It's definitely like we're reforming, right? But one of the original members has died and been replaced by James. James is a young kid on the block. But there you go. Thanks for that, Jerry. I'm sure that those with their thinking caps on will get stuck and tore right in about us for that one. John Clements, Wintergreen. That's what it was called. Wintergreen, in the old dodgy changing rooms of under 12 soccer in Fife. Brilliant. Alan Robertson, Deep Heat, Red Ash, and a Mitre Moldmaster. Memories. The Mitre Moldmaster actually tattooed your leg, and you know what I mean? It was that bad. And elsewhere on your anatomy as well. Michael McDonald, where are we going to calibrate after the game? I don't know about you, mate. I don't know where we're going to calibrate. Maybe that's going back to the old Red Mist. But we're going to celebrate, that's for sure. What's your plans down in Swindon, Brian? You got something set up with the CSC after the game?
So sadly, I won't make it to the CSC tomorrow. I need to watch it at home, the game. which is it's probably better for my health, to be honest with you. I get too excited. I can't deny it. I get too excited. But there's going to be loads of boys down at the Cock Bar in Swindon, with a few guys visiting Swindon that heard about it, came up last time. It'll be absolutely bouncing. So the guys are all looking forward to it, and yeah, it's going to be a good crack. A few of them are up for the cup final, the 25th as well. So I'm going to catch up with them in a bit then. So yeah, it's going to be really good. And it's the sun's. I had to shut this blind because the sun's splitting the trees. It's been scorching down here, and as a peely wally sally like myself, if I go out in the sun too long, I burst into flames like a vampire. So I do love it, but for the sake of the podcast, I thought I'd better just hide some in the sun. I don't want any more unnecessary abuse in the comments for showing off.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a name for the boy band, lads. The Tim Malloys. Thank you, Jerry Smith. We've got, instead of InSync, we've got Kitchen Sink, Andy Lee, and Boyzone, says Kieran. So thank you very much for your suggestions. The Flying Haggis is coming in because you've got to take it. Charlie Nicholas is grieving. Bring back the mullet, says the Flying Haggis. And Robert Arbuckle, let's get back to the football. They will come flying out the blocks looking to smash. We just need to stay calm and play through them now. Lloyd, we've been on so many games this season, Kevin McCluskey and I, where at half-time, things aren't actually going to plan. And there was always this kind of mantra that we've got of no panic, don't panic. We've spoken about Callum McGregor. And there was a game under Ange Postecoglou where Rangers took an early lead. Who scored the goal? Remember the guy that missed
Ramsey.
That was right. It was Ramsey.
Ramsey and Roger Vicker scored for us to win it.
Yeah, it was Ramsey. The biggest signing that Scottish football had ever seen since Brian Laudrup, apparently. Mm-hmm. And he opened the scoring that day, and there was a masterclass in how to stay focused and how to stay calm. And I'm going to go back to Brian's point about Celtic players having been through this. McGregor, Forrest, you look at Joe Hart now, 3 years in the job. Cameron Carter-Vickers is in there. Kyogo's one of the guys as well. Is that a reason to start Forrest? I know that James mentioned him earlier. Is it a purple patch? Is he in for the duration now? How do we look at that, Lloyd? Do we play Forrest from the start for all of these other aspects, away from actually playing the game? Because Kuhn, he's a hit or miss so far, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a bit of a hit and a miss, but at the same time, I think Forrest brings a wealth of experience to this game as well. And obviously the age he is and everything. So I would be looking to play Forrest tomorrow because I just think he brings a good balance. He helps out Johnson defensively as well. And you've got that on the left-hand side with Maeda and Taylor. The thing about the game tomorrow is, for us, it's just a do not lose game. But for Rangers, it's a must-win game. So they will need to come out flying for the traps at some point in the game, and that we'll just pick them off by that point. Now, if we get an early goal, 60,000 fans in the sun, all having fun, what can possibly go wrong?
Having fun in the sun, I like that. There's too many boy bands with the name Boy, but I think they should probably realise that was the whole idea of it. Tony Daly, the Backstreet Boys, Cheers, the Spice Boys. Oh, who remembers the Liverpool team that turned up for the FA Cup final wearing kind of like cream suits? Remember that? They were called the Spice Boys as well. What about yourself, Chris? James Forrest would get my vote. I've named my team. My team is the strongest team I think that we've got. And it's a team that, people might argue the toss about whether or not Liam Scales should be playing for Celtic as a first pick. He's the best. Give me a defender who's better than him right now that you would play against Rangers. I'm sorry, there isn't one, right? Because it would be too much of a risk to bring someone in at this stage. So for me, the team, I know it's a cliche, I think it picks itself, other than that winger, right? So Maeda, if he's coming back and he's fit, he plays. On the right-hand side, I'm going for James Forrest. What about yourself, Chris?
I'm sorry, Paul John. I'm having to take my eyes off these comments because some of these are absolutely epic. And yeah, you're right. I am struggling not to laugh at some of these names. But no, going back to your point, I think I said it last week. Liam Scales has got the manager's trust, and it's an earned trust, right? I know, like players in every team across every league, he's prone to the odd mistake. He's had a few ups and downs this season, but for me, he's earned his spot in the team based on what else we have at the club. Nawrocki was brought in. We expected him to be the partner with Carter-Vickers at the start of the season. Injuries played a part against both of them. The partnership never materialised. Certainly hasn't come to fruition at this point in the season. Whereas Scales, every time he's been called upon, he's gone in there and he's done an honest, hard-working, high-effort job. And for me, he's got more right than he's got wrong in terms of his performance. Look, I get it. He'll never be everyone's favourite player. He'll never be seen as the marquee, signing that we wanted to replace Starfelt. But the point is that he is the man that's been in there and done the job when he's been called upon. And look, for me, he plays tomorrow. I just don't think you change it at this point. You don't. I'm always against changing a winning team unless you're absolutely forced to. So for me, he plays. He's got the benefit of having Carter Vickers, who I think if anyone's looked at James's blog already this morning, James has really called out Carter Vickers' virtues and how dependent we are on him. Scales has got the benefit of playing alongside him. They're building up a pretty decent partnership, and for me, that's your starting centre back pairing. It's Carter Vickers and Liam Scales.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, James McMullen, Forrest and Maida to start. Now, that's what I've said. That's what I would go with. But there's a few people disagreeing. Now, Charlie Conley also thinks Forrest and Maida to start the game. What about this for a point? And I'm going to throw this one to James, because James has written about some of the starters and some of the key players for Celtic going into this game tomorrow. Stephen Ray comes in. Stephen, of course, spoke last week about the fact that we probably shouldn't write off Lewis Palmer yet in terms of what he's done over the fullness of the season. And Stephen says, Forrest and Kuhn to start. Rangers have been more dangerous 60 minutes onwards in the last three fixtures. So that's when you look to bring Maida, Palmer and Ida on. I think that's a good point, James. What was the conclusion you came to? What was your summary, James, in terms of, I know you were going on about Forrest and his form. Do you start him or do you start Maida? And Stephen Ray's actually had a good argument for starting Kuhn there as well.
I think I'd be holding Kuhn for the bench. I think Kuhn's a very energetic player, very quick player, so why don't you bring Kuhn on later in the game for James Forrest, when James Forrest, his legs are going to go eventually in this game, maybe about the 70th, 80th minute. So when James Forrest goes off around that time, have Nicholas Kuhn to bring on, and we know how much Daizen Maida can run. He's relentless. So you can have him going up and down that left-hand side for the entirety of the game. But I think makes a good point about Rangers being most dangerous in the last half hour. I don't know if it's the fact that Rangers are more dangerous then or Celtic are more vulnerable then. If you look over the course of this season, the amount of late goals at Celtic ship, it's pretty frightening. I mean, 2 against Aberdeen at Hampden, 2 goals against Rangers after the 85th minute at Ibrox. You can see that late goal at home to Kilmarnock early a few weeks ago as well. So this Celtic team closing out games has sometimes been an issue. And I think against Hearts, it looked a bit different. We scored that goal in the 87th minute. We looked mostly in control for the entirety of that second half. And that was a positive sign for me. But if we are 2-0 up against Rangers on the hour mark, like we were in the last game at Celtic Park, that was still a very nervy finale to that game. We need to find a way to close the game out without any sort of nerves or the crowd getting on the team's back or anything of the sort that could influence the game. Ideally, you want the game killed off by that hour mark. And I think Brendan, he will have the tools to figure that out. He'll have the options to bring on from the bench, and he's too intelligent a manager not to be able to figure it out. So it's going to be a very tight game at the weekend, but we can't afford it to get as nervy as previous derbies I've got, especially that one at Ibrox a few weeks ago. We can't allow that to happen again in the final half hour of the game.
This is the thing. I mean, you look at the 3 games and how tight they've been, Brian. You go back to Ibrox, a 1-0 game, phenomenal finish by Kyogo, but a couple of moments in that game where it was hearts and mouths, it was VAR, it was just hoping and praying that it went our way. Even though I felt that the decisions were right. But it was very, very tight, Brian. You then fast forward to the 2-1 game, and I thought we were absolutely dominant for a massive spell of that game. But there was a 20 to 25 minute spell in the second half where we kind of lost our way. Rangers got a goal back, and it could have quite easily have ended as a draw. And in the 3H game, as James says there, the margins have been very, very fine this season. And there's a lot of people very, very confident going into the game. Brian, I expect that regardless of, talking about mutiny versus unity, I do expect it to be extremely tight. When you're picking a starting 11, as James has said there, you are looking at certain players who can make an impact when folk are tiring, both emotionally, physically. Would that force you against maybe starting James Forrest tomorrow?
I don't think so. So actually, I think Stephen in the comments made a really good point. But what I would always say about that is I think that sometimes there's a tendency we say, well, bring them on for the second half or bring a better players on for late impact. But I think when you're at home with this crowd, all your own fans, start early, start strong. So in this, I'd rather have my strongest team for the first 40 minutes than bring people on to win you the game. I think with Ada, and what Forrest will give you is a calmness. Because the thing with Kuhn is, and I think a lot of us have ate a bit of humble pie about Kuhn, because I think he's actually come on to a wee bit of game. He's looked a wee bit better, a wee bit off, but he's getting there. But I think he could get overawed in that, even though it's our own fans that have got his back, because maybe a misplaced pass or maybe he dinks inside where it's across, people start to get on him a wee bit. I think that could be intimidating. So I think Forrest in there, controlling it, knowing when to pass, knowing when to bring something into play. Lloyd mentioned earlier, defensively good for Johnson as well. He's back, he puts in. I just think you start your strongest team. For me, that's their strongest team. And then, because I think the good thing about buying guys like Ida on later is he can hold it up and run into the channels. Mm-hmm. And Kuhn, if you're looking for a bit of energy, just tell him to run and get it to him. And even Palmer coming on could probably find those long passes, as long as there's no dilly-dally. He can find those long passes as well. So I think the bench is going to be stronger than it's been. And when you look at, the previous derbies this season, they've been fairly close affairs on paper. But, I mean, the reality, the 3 each game there, that was a penalty they should never have because of the swan diver, Silver. Mm-hmm. A deflected goal. I don't think they created much other than that. The third goal was a good one, to be fair. Matondo's finish was cracking, but I don't think they actually seemed that much of a threat. So there's no reason to think we should be overawed by anything. And they've always got a mass injuries as well. And it's funny because the only thing I think that is making me slightly wary is the fact we're so much favourites. I'm so confident about tomorrow. And that's always a slight worry. Because when you're too confident sometimes, I don't know that always suits us. I think especially with this team this season, the moments you've spoken about is when our back's been against the wall a wee bit, when we've been kind of doubted, like the first game at Ibrox, like even the game at Parkhead, where we've been expected. And I think that grit, that seed mentality in the team, when you're overwhelming favourites, that's a slight concern. But then I've got to offset against the fact that against Hearts, I think that was their best 90 minutes in the league all season. We've been very much a team of two halves.
Yeah.
One half great, one half poor. I think the Hearts game was probably the first full performance. Even the Dundee game where we absolutely smashed them. The first half was exceptional. Second half wasn't as good. The Hearts were pretty consistent. And I think that in the game against Athletic at home is really the full 2 90-minute performances we've had. So I think we're due one again tomorrow as well. So no concerns for me about the team. I think whoever starts is going to win. But for me, I've been on the Forest train for a while. I've been trying to get him to start, and I think he deserves it. And I think Maeda, just to unsettle Tavernier right away, you got to start him.
Yeah, I definitely would. A couple of shout-outs coming through on the socials and via email. Anthony McDonald sent us a lovely wee message on email. And this is a thing that is often not seen, is the amount of support you get behind the scenes from people tuning in, telling you how much they love the show and how much it's become such a staple part of their day. So a big shout out to Anthony McDonald, who got his first season ticket back in 1982. Incredible how the times have changed since then. And Den on the YouTube comments, I'm going to read this one out. Alas, the phone call came through from Wishaw letting me know that my older brother Peter passed away is it Hermeyer's Hospital this afternoon? Did I say that right?
Yeah,
we were only 1 year apart and hung out together faithfully until the age of 14. Peter, like his namesake father, Peter Senior, were ardent Celtic fans. Both enjoyed the Steen era together. Rest in peace. And thoughts and prayers with you, Den, and all your family as well. And a big well done to Stephen Moran, who won our latest competition on the socials as well. And we're hoping to get that dropped off to you later on today. Magnet67, just for tuning into Acsom, You win prizes. What's that all about? Afternoon Acsom legends from boiling Iraq. Cannot wait for tomorrow. I wondered who that viewer was in Iraq. Cannot wait for tomorrow. Feel really confident, but also cautious. Thanks for tuning in. James Kerwin, we have a united, untied, hopefully they are untied team over the last few weeks. Playing again, not great, but getting the job done. As for our rivals, their fans are having a go at players. The frustrated Bears are not having a picnic. Right. I'm going to bring this up, right, because there seems to be a bit of an edge here. There's a bit of an edge whereby I made a few comments yesterday that I didn't think were very explosive. I thought it was all a bit low-key, to be honest with you. And in many ways, when I go back to that Invincible season, what I'm saying is, right, we won that league on a canter. Yes, it was incredible to watch. Some of the best memories I've ever had as a Celtic supporter. You're winning a treble, which at that point, didn't happen that often. When Brendan Rodgers came in, winning a treble was not something we did that often. And in actual fact, at that point, we had only won, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 trebles in the entire history of the football club. 2 under Jock Stein, 1 under Martin O'Neill. So winning that treble, I do not underestimate it. My point is, the challenge we had that season was not as great a challenge as we've had this season. Now, some people might counter-argument that and say, well, that's because we've been rubbish, or that's because we've not signed good enough players, or whatever it might have been. But the fact remains we've had a much bigger challenge this season than last. But what I found, Lloyd, was honestly, it felt as though I'd just thrown a grenade and ran away. There was a lot of unhappy Bears talking about my comments. And what I was actually saying to them is, you're better now than you were then. It was actually a backhanded compliment. What is going to be the aftermath of the game? That's my question, Lloyd. What happens if Celtic win this match? What is the aftermath? And what is the effect? Let's look on, what is the effect next season if Celtic win this game, both for us and our nearest challengers?
Yeah, well, for us, obviously, if we win this game tomorrow, we'll be celebrating 3 in a row. And it'll all be good times, 60 million again in the bank. Oh, look, more money in the bank. Fantastic. So it could put a real dent into Rangers as well. Because then how are they going to recover for that? Because then it's once again, they go in the summer with Clermont, they'll do a rebuild. But how many rebuilds are they going to keep doing before they get anywhere near us? We're going to need a massive rebuild in the summer as well, but we needed one last summer, and look what happened. We had an 8-point advantage in the league, we blew it, and now we're 3 points ahead still, and could possibly wrap up this title tomorrow. Well, I say wrap up, but obviously, mathematically, it's not done yet, but it's as good as done. So, yeah, it's the summer's massive, but this league title's massive. This one's probably one of the most important ones. And regarding your comments yesterday, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the Invincible treble is memories we'll all have. The double treble, absolutely
Keep
fantastic.
Going. Treble. It continued, yeah.
Was there one after that? Can I remember? There was
what would the fifth one have been called? Was it the quintuple? Is it a quintuple treble?
It's a quintuple treble.
Is that right?
Nah, quintuple.
That's what I'll be drinking at the CSE.
A quintuple what though, Brian?
A
quintuple what?
Nice whiskey. Nice whiskey.
Oh,
that's what I'm signing.
Brilliant. No, you're right, Lloyd. You're right. And the thing with that, with the comments and everything else, I'm of the view that there's a lot of people, Chris, that look at the Scottish game and they think that you can collect trophies for fun, and it's easy and it's tin pot and all this kind of stuff. And I think this season has shown that if you're not absolutely on it, and I'm talking from everything from recruitment to the fitness of players to the dynamic between the fans and the team, because obviously we've had issues with our biggest fan groups being banned from the stadium this season. If everything's not on point, and we've seen it obviously during the pandemic, you won't win the league. It's not a given. You've got to turn up. You've got to turn up every single week to win this league. But what I'm starting to look ahead to, and some people don't like doing this, what is the impact of a Celtic win tomorrow? I'm building this game up, I get it, but the impact could be massive for both clubs, positive and negative.
Absolutely. And look, I am conscious that there's nothing more dangerous than a winded animal. And by God, those Bears are winded at the moment. They really are. And I'm not just talking about those very, very fragile little egos that some of their supporters tend to have. But yeah, look, we know about the financial implications of winning the league this year. It's going to either massively extend our advantage financially over Rangers, or it could start to restore some of the parity between the two clubs if we, for whatever reason, and I genuinely don't think it'll happen, but for whatever reason we don't go on and win the title. But we don't like discussing that. It's positive. We've got a good game to look forward to tomorrow. So let's just go, for argument's sake, that we are actually going to go and get a good win and go on and get this title. I think it's important. Like, history won't remember whether you won it by 1 point or whether you won it by 20 points, right? Over the course. I know some people can never let it go, and we all remember Helicopter Sunday and all that sort of thing. But the point is that ultimately it comes down to whose name goes on that trophy at the end of the season. And for me, if it's our name that goes on that trophy, then I don't care what we've had to face this season. We've got over the line. We've done our job. The manager should get credit. The players should get credit. Yes, we have to look to the summer, go on and improve and really take advantage of hopefully the new financial position we'll be in, the fact we'll be back in the Champions League again. And I want to see progress both on the park and actually behind the scenes as well. I want to see these moves that we're seeing at the moment continue, where we're starting to invest in our infrastructure and really take the club as a whole to the next level in terms of recruitment, scouting, giving the manager what he needs to go in there and build a sustainable, successful team on the park. But you know what? See, right now, I just want to go to the game tomorrow. I want to have a bit of fun.
A little bit of fun. Yeah, people don't like you having fun, unfortunately.
So I noticed yesterday. Did you put your video? I thought your video was very amicable. I thought it was very, you were very objective, very complimentary. But there's I don't know, there's just a wee bit of fragility.
There seems to be. There seems to be. And somebody actually, I'll find the comment, is talking about my backdrop, because there is this belief that I'm in my bedroom and I've got a Celtic duvet set and green and white hoops on my wall and all this kind of stuff. Is it true? Who knows? Will you ever know? It could well be true. Alan really Robertson.
It's true. It's damn true.
It's true. There you go. It's confirmed. Loved the Timmy Malet and Donegal video. Class. I loved it as well, Alan. It's great when people who aren't traditionally, born into a Celtic supporting family find the club and they decide either, I'm not saying Timmy Malet's a Celtic fan all of a sudden, but they decide to support Celtic. And one of the greatest stories I've ever heard of this, guys, is actually on our blog, and it's an author called Chaz Nuke Burden. You might have seen him on the socials, very vocal about animal rights, etc. He's a runner, and he's written like over 30 books. It might even be near to 40 books now. And he tells a story of how he discovered Celtic. It wasn't in his family, he wasn't born into it, wasn't an uncle that took him to the game. He discovered Celtic himself when he was already a fan of another team. He supported Arsenal at the time, and he decided to turn his back on English football and support Celtic. It's a brilliant story. I love how Celtic, obviously, I mean, most of us here will have been born into the club. It's a decision that's born, it's made for you before you're even born. But I love these other stories. How did you discover Celtic? Go and read the story. It's tremendous. Now, Ridiculizer, welcome to the House of Fun. Welcome to the Lion's Den. Now, I could have sang it, and Lloyd is dying to do the madness dance.
Brian.
Do the madness dance, absolutely. Craig Monroe, good to see you, Craig. I absolutely love the phrase, by any means necessary. The Celtic team fed right into that when leaving for the last derby. I think this all feeds in to the mentality that we seem to have found ourselves in right now, James. You go back to that game, the 3H game, and Brendan with the coach, and they're leaving for that game. And there's many players in that team, obviously, having come in January, the two new recruits, but even the summer ones who might not have seen that kind of scene before. And they might be thinking there's fans crowding around the car park, and there's pyro, and they might be thinking, wow, we didn't realise. And I think what Brendan's done, he's been very cute. He's got a very small band of players there, I think, that he trusts. And there might be a few in the periphery at the moment. Guys like Palmer, I think, maybe Nawrocki, maybe Yang, who we've not even mentioned, who this season, maybe the race has been ran, but maybe next season it'll still be able to tap into them. What do you make of that? Are we just writing off the summer transfer window because there was no players starting the game against Hearts who we brought in the summer? Or do you think that Brendan can still get a tune out of one or two of them?
Well, I think if you look at the Hearts game on Saturday, Nicholas Kuhn was the only one of any signing made across 2 transfer windows that has started. And I think we spent about 25, 30 million in the summer, plus another, 4 or 5 million in January. That's not good enough. And we all know that it's not good enough, which is why 2 people in the recruitment team have lost their job over the last few months, and why we're making stretches to improve the recruitment team, which I'm sure we all saw the nepotism and Mark Law becoming the head of the recruitment. We all might have feared, no matter how bad he does, he's never going to be removed for that role. But thankfully he has, and thankfully we can hopefully see an upturn in signings come this summer. I've seen the Liam Kelly rumours been setting off a lot of people. He's just going to be a backup goalie. Liam Kelly's not replacing Joe Hart. We need to calm down a bit there. But hopefully there's a massive improvement in signings. And
have we not already got somebody in the building? Benjamin. What's happened to Benji?
He's definitely... I thought he was going to leave in January. I was reading about Aberdeen were interested in January. I wouldn't be surprised if they come back in from in the summer, because he's probably still a solid Premiership goalkeeper. Just Celtic hasn't been the place for him because Scott Bain's overtaken him in the pecking order. But I think with a couple of the guys we signed in the summer, there is still going to be room for some of them at Celtic. I think Louise Palmer has showed that he can influence a game for Celtic. He can have the quality for Celtic. I think his form dipped off as the team dipped off around about mid-December, and he just hasn't been able to rediscover that same confidence, that same momentum that he's built up. It seems like a player who runs on momentum, and hopefully with a pre-season, which he didn't have last season either, he can rediscover some of that form that he had at the start of this season. A couple of the younger guys like Yang, Odenholm, I think loan moves could be in order for them, because we've seen flashes. It's not as if it's been all dismal. We've seen flashes of brilliance from these guys. They just need regular football to enhance their abilities, and I think you can send them out to teams like that, but I don't see any of them making a real impact this Saturday, maybe perhaps besides Louise Palmer. But the comment that you brought up earlier, by any means necessary, I think the players get that. You see at the end of the games when they go and they clap the fans after it. I think if you look at about January, February time, they were still showing the appreciation to the fans, that the players it looked like they were taking it for granted almost. They were like, we don't deserve this. That performance wasn't good enough. But you've seen over the last few weeks, guys like Joe Hart, guys like Callum McGregor, the rest of the players in the squad, they're a lot more passionate when they're applauding the supporters and getting involved in the celebrations after the game. And that shows me that they get it as well. And we just need the same reflection on the park on Saturday, because the fans are going to show them that they know what it means, and the players need to show us that they know what it means as well. There's 3 games to go in this massive title race. We've had all the twists and turns. I don't know how I'm more nervous than anybody else on the panel heading into this game. All I've known, besides the 2021 season, is success. So I should have no reason to be nervous. But the nightmare scenario is always playing on my mind. You lose this game, you're level on points, going to kill you away on Wednesday. We know how that ground goes for Celtic. So that scenario is still playing in my head. But we have the advantage on the park. We've got the players in form with the form team. It looks like we're winning a bit of a psychological battle during the week. Well, I don't know how much you can read into that when it comes to game day. And I think the fans have a massive say. I think we all know how good the Celtic Park atmosphere is. When we're good, it's going to be great. But if Rangers start fast, I don't know how the fans will react. I think the emphasis has to be, I think the fans understand that you have to pick the players up. I don't see the Celtic fans responding with a toxic atmosphere should we have a bad start against Rangers at Celtic Park. But the statement, by any means necessary, couldn't be any more true. The players get it, the fans get it. We just need everything to click together tomorrow.
It seems though, I used to laugh with James, because I mean the worst he'd ever seen was that time Celtic gave away a corner kick and then we didn't win the league. But the thing that you say there, by any means necessary, and players getting it, I think that what's happened this season, Brian, I don't know if you agree with this, mate, is that Brendan Rodgers has found maybe a couple of guys who didn't get it, and they might have been technically good players, so they're no longer getting starts. And he's playing guys like Liam Scales is not the most fashionable footballer in the world, but whilst he's been fit this season, he has played every single minute of football under Brendan Rodgers. And I think he realised quite quickly with that influx of players. I said at the beginning of the season, some people say, buying players, why is that a bad thing? You're strengthening a treble winning side. I said you don't bring in 9 players when you've won a treble. I mean, it can actually work against you in terms of having too many players who don't get it, Brian, who have not been in a winning dressing room, who don't have the mentality. And I think slowly but surely Brendan Rodgers has weeded them out at the moment because he knows this is a lot tighter than we thought it was going to be. Let's get it over the line. And maybe 1 or 2 of them can be salvaged in the summer and for next season, Brian. How do you read that?
I think that's pretty spot on, to be fair. I've said before on here, being good enough ain't enough to be a Celtic player. You've got to have a certain mindset, a certain attitude. And the thing about it is as well, like, look, you start any new job, sometimes the dynamic's not great. You know what I mean? Sometimes things, you might be the right person in the wrong role. That can happen. It can happen with football players as well. So it's a bit of learning experience. But ultimately, what's important is we've got players on the park. We've got our strongest 11 available. We've got the guys that Brendan trusts, guys that we all think get it. And, you know, unless they have some sort of wibble or wobble, I should say, and it makes mistakes, I think we're in a good place. So, you know, I'm very confident. Don't get me wrong, if we sign Liam Kelly, even as a 4th choice goalkeeper, that's not a good statement of intent for me. You'd be better saying Jerry Taylor, he'll do it for free. He's probably better. So I hope we don't do that. But in all seriousness, I'm going to say we're going to do 4-1 tomorrow. It's going to be a bit of canter.
Okay, we're going to go round the room then. Brian has started it. It's 4-1, says Brian Dent. I'm going to come back to these predictions next week, by the way, guys. Lloyd, Patrick Jepson. We've got 4-1 from Brian. What do you reckon?
Like Brian, I'm very confident. I'm actually so calm about this game in the morning. I don't know why. So I'm going for a confident 3-1 Celtic victory.
3-1, says Lloyd. I'm zigzagging. James, over to you. What's your prediction?
I'm not going to go as sort of over the top as you guys' predictions might have gone. I went on national TV at the start of the season and said we're going to draw 2-2 at Ibrox. We won 1-0. So I'm a bit of a fence sitter when it comes to the predictions. I'm going to go for 2-1 though. That's the safest 2-1 prediction you can probably go for.
I'm going, before I come to Chris, I'll let Chris have the last word on this. I'm going to agree with James, right, guys, and those in the comments. And what I'm going to say is Rangers will take the lead. And it will be all down to that composure and that focus and everything else we've been talking about all week that will get us back into the game and will win us the game. All right. So I'm going to agree with you there, James. What about yourself, Chris?
I'm going to go 4-2. I agree. I think Rangers will take the lead. I'm going to go for my Kyogo hat-trick, and I think maybe a wee Jamesy Forrest.
I'll tell you something, mate. See if you believe in that. Stick a $5 on it. I'm not a betting man, but that's an outrageous one. I'll
tell you why, right? And it goes back to something James said earlier about only knowing success. And I was scouring YouTube. I've been trying to get right into the build up for the game, and I was watching Henrik Larsson talking about the 97-98 season, the game against St Johnstone. Yes. Where we had to win. And there's a brilliant visual, James, I'm sure your knowledge and your background in journalism, you've probably seen this. But there's a great video where it actually focuses on the crowd as Larsson picks up the ball and he's running. The crowd's as tense as anything. And you think, is he going to hit it? Is he going to hit it? Is he going to hit it? You just see him hit it. You don't see the ball going in the net, but you just see the crowd's reaction. And that, for me, absolutely embodies what it means to win a league title when you haven't only known success. And Paul, John and myself, and I won't make an assumption about Lloyd or Brian's age, but we went through 9 years of pain watching Graham Souness and Walter Smith. I wouldn't say anything about legalities, but the fact is they went and they won 9 titles in a row. And that season it was all about stopping a 10. And I tell you, see, when you've been through that and you've seen what it means to the fans, you've been part of it, that makes you appreciate every single league title, no matter how many trebles or we ever get to doing the quintuple treble. That is what we need to bottle up tomorrow and unleash against this mob, that kind of thing, and that's what I'm going for. So you know what, I'm sticking to my prediction, 4-2. I want a proper statement, hammering. Then I'm going to be on here, and I know Paul John's got a rule about not drinking, but right at the end of the pod, I might just pour a wee double.
Why not? Why not, indeed? Thanks every single one of you for getting involved in the comments. 1,500 strong. We are now streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X and Instagram. Thanks everybody for getting involved across all those platforms. We're doing a few gigs coming up over the next few weeks, and the tickets are underneath this video. As always, give us a big thumbs up if you like what Acsom does. It does help. We've got a new show going to be on the channel. It's going to be a weekly show. We're working on it. It's in development. It's been in the works for a few years. Takes me a while to get the thing going, but once it's going, it continues. So yes, look forward to that, and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss an episode of the new show. It's going to be called This is Acsom. So I'm really looking forward to that. But let's focus on tomorrow's game. Join us 1 hour before kickoff. I'll be joined with a few of the Acsom team, and we'll be talking about all things Celtic. All that's left for me to say, Lloyd, Chris, Brian and James, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.